Williams, I promise you, we will continue to fight. We won't let them sweep it under the rug. I know there's this great willingness of political expediency to say that's yesterday's news. But nah, Darrel Tyree Williams will always be news to us and our community. We're not going to let them forget it. Justice for Darrel Tyree Williams. 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 And we will continue to say that chant. Now we're going to hear from a great lawyer who goes all around the country fighting for justice with us, and they fought with us not only in this case, but Jason Walker, who was shot 60 times in Ohio, going away. They fight for him too. And Attorney Blake Grove and I are so honored to have Attorney Ken Abano fighting with us for Darrel Tyree Williams. And he's going to tell you about some of his takeaways from the meeting with the prosecutor, and then we will introduce you to somebody I know who's going to keep it real to talk about her reactions with the district attorney. Attorney Abano.
So we were here just a few months ago to talk about what happened on that fateful night when Darrel was devastatingly attacked. We heard, as we started here today, about a relentless fight. And that is exactly what we are here to do. Continue to relentlessly fight for justice for Darrel. What have we learned since we were here in February? Well, the investigation is going on at a relatively slow pace. Much too slow of a pace for our liking. Justice needs to be swifter and quicker. And it's unfortunate that, as Mr. Crump noted, there are two justice systems that we see in the United States. And it goes without saying that if Darrel had been the aggressor that night and the individuals who had died were white, this investigation would have been concluded. Decisions would have been made and charges would have been filed. But that didn't happen. We hear about the proactive policing in communities I grew up in. That never happened. And we all know why. And it needs to stop. And the way it stops is by having individuals with the ability to make decisions to try and get it to stop, to have the courage to force people to stop. Now, what we're told is the investigation continues into what happened that night. But what we do know is that there were concerns about a heart condition. We know, and we've known this for months, that Darrel was pleading. He was relentlessly fighting for his life in a fight that he did not start. He was sitting in his car when he's approached for whatever reason they're going to try and create. And that resulted in multiple taser applications. Multiple. That should never have happened. Accountability, transparency, and responsibility. We've talked about wanting to see the policies. And we can only hope that we will see the policies sooner rather than later that we believe were violated that night. We want to have the police officers talk about what happened that night and not hide behind the shield of whatever they have that precludes them from being forced to talk. You know, they can't be forced to talk in the system that's going on right now. They can refuse to comment on what happened that night. And odds are, if that happens, do any charges get filed? If they refuse to say anything. They can hide there. It's time to stop hiding. If there is a belief by the police department that these officers did nothing wrong, then let's hear it. Show the courage to step up and say what happened that night. You can choose to hide behind the lawyers if you'd like, or you can demonstrate the courage to speak to the Williams family and justify what you did that night. But will that happen? It won't. And that's incredibly sad. That's a sad statement for where we are today. Because if ultimately no charges are filed, everyone will say that everything was fine. Why is everybody worried about what happened? Well, it's because we don't know the story. And those who are responsible for tasing aren't obligated to talk. Again, for full justice, you want to know what happened. For true justice, we deserve to know what happened. But in the system that is set up right now, it's a system that is set up against the Williams family. We have to relentlessly fight to, I dare say, in 2023, create a system that's equal? Why in 2023 are we fighting to create a system that is equal? That is just not right. And we have to relentlessly fight to fix that. The Williams family did not ask for this. They did not ask to have to be advocates in here, but they are, because they're fighting not only for family, they're fighting for others, so that this doesn't happen to anybody else in this town or in any town in the United States. We're going to continue this relentless fight. You will hear more now from Dawn. Absolutely. One of the other issues that we're going to look at is the reasonableness of this taser deployment. And we've seen in the reported articles, not once, not twice, not 3, not 4, not 5, keep counting how many times tasers were deployed, how many times there was direct contact, how inappropriate and unreasonable this taser deployment was. And what we have not heard and what we have not seen is a willingness by the police department to say, here's our policies, everything was reasonable that night. Everything was done correctly. The manner in which Darrel was tased was unreasonable. Period. Full stop. The manner in which the officers acted, chasing him down, getting him down on the ground, and continuing to use that force that was unnecessary and unreasonable while he's lying on the ground, fighting and saying, I have a heart problem. All of that will be demonstrated to be unreasonable. The beginning of the stop to the countless taser applications. We have to figure out why, and we have to stop it.
Thank you, Ken. Let me say this before we have the head of Emancipate NC come before you. I don't know how you don't consider the charge of criminal negligence. When a man tells you, I have a heart condition, and you again tase him multiple times. I mean, where's the humanity? And so I think the district attorney's office can't look away from that. We can't say you see that type of inhumanity and you look the other way. Or you try to justify the unjustifiable tasing of a person who is face down with multiple officers surrounding him, and you tase him again. You know, Ken, it just troubles me. Don, I keep wondering, like, at what point do you say, we got him? We got him. Like, why are we tasing him some more? You got him. Is it just to make an example of him for every other black person in that community to know that we can do whatever we want to you, however we want to, and whenever we want to? That is not what we call community policing. That follows this model of police intimidation units giving free rein to just terrorize the black communities. That's what they are often referred to in our community, police terrorization units, because they come and terrorize us on a regular basis. And I know my white brothers and sisters, they don't understand this, because no police terror units are going to come to your community pulling you out the car, cursing you out, hitting you, assaulting and battering you. That doesn't happen in white communities, but it happens on a regular basis in communities of color and black and brown communities. And apparently, Raleigh, North Carolina is no exception. To offer you more about this for somebody who's been fighting this on a daily basis here, and she hasn't shied away from the fight. And we're so proud to fight with our sister and her organization, Emancipate NC, attorney Don Blagrove, who has some significant announcements and updates for you. Don?
So, in addition to what you've already heard that came out of our meeting with District Attorney Freeman, we also learned that she alone will make the decision as to whether or not law enforcement officers will be charged criminally in this case.
No grand jury?
No grand jury. There will be no grand jury. She will make that determination. And it is in that moment, and in this moment, that I want you all to realize what the fight here in North Carolina is really about. It is about district attorneys who have so much power and so much control that they get to determine whether or not they are going to wrap themselves and their office around real community safety. The way we define community safety as individuals who live in communities, and the way institutions like the District Attorney's Office and the Raleigh Police Department define community safety are very, very different. We want to make sure that District Attorney Freeman, as she makes the decision about bringing criminal charges in this case, investigates this case as if the perpetrators were young boys on Bragg Street. We want her to prosecute, with the zealousness that she does marijuana charges. We want her to do a thorough investigation, and that means not jump to the conclusion that these law enforcement officers had made a legal stop. Because we do not believe, and you've already heard here, that there was nothing legal about the interaction between Raleigh Police Department's terror unit and Darrel Williams that night. District Attorney Freeman says that it is her job to follow the law, and we agree. But if she is following the law, Her analysis of whether or not criminal charges are warranted in this case cannot begin at the time the tasers were deployed. Her investigation has to begin at the beginning. Her investigation has to begin at the initial interaction. Because let me be clear, if, as we believe, there was no lawful arrest, there was no lawful interaction, then that changes the law that is applicable to the case. When we spoke to District Attorney Freeman this morning, I left with the impression that she had already concluded that the initial interaction was lawful. That is problematic. And as a community, we must hold her accountable to investigate the entire situation and not just the portions she picks and chooses. We do not believe that Raleigh Police Department had a constitutional grounds for interacting with Mr. Williams. Therefore, as Mr. Williams fought for his life, he was doing so against people who were not acting in the color of law. This was a man literally running, fighting for his life, pleading and begging. The district attorney's office has a responsibility to keep the community safe. That means all of us. There was no one else in the state of North Carolina who can hold law enforcement agencies accountable other than the district attorney. It is not enough for the district attorney to look at the criminal acts of individual officers without looking at the systemic harm that Raleigh Police Department causes and holding the officers and the department criminally liable for murder. She has a responsibility to ensure that the community is kept safe from lawless law enforcement. That is also her job. And it is imperative, and we call on each of you citizens who voted for Lauren Freeman in Wake County, or even if you didn't, to make sure that she is investigating the entire criminal act. She is investigating all of what happened, and she is looking for and pursuing criminal charges for the murder of Darrel Tyree Williams. We don't know what the official cause of death is, but what we do know for sure is that what caused his death was apathy. What caused his death was a dereliction of duty on behalf of District Attorney Lauren Freeman to hold Raleigh Police Department officers accountable in the past. What caused his death was a lack of oversight and a lack of accountability, and that falls squarely at the feet of the District Attorney's office. When we sat in our office today, what we told her, what we asked her, was that she course correct. Anyone who read the Rolling Stone article knows that there is corruption in the Raleigh Police Department, and also knows that that corruption is being upheld by turning a blind eye by the Wake County District Attorney's Office. Now is the time for District Attorney Freeman to do her job, to course correct, and to keep the community safe against a lawless Raleigh Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And finally, we will hear from Darrel Tyree Williams' mother, Miss Sonia Williams. Take your time.
Okay. Hello, this was my son. And it's not a day that goes by I don't think about how he was violently and wrongfully taken away from me. His birthday is coming up May 26th. I want everyone to think about him on that day. And like I said, I just want to seek justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Williams with a painting that was done by one of Emancipate NC's other clients,
Okay.
who stands with you in this fight.
She lose her child?
She did not. She is actually incarcerated and is fighting for her to have her rights taken care of by the state.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
That is.
That is
So we
beautiful.
wanted to make sure we
Thank
presented
you.
that to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you to Emancipate NC. We're going to take some of your questions. It is troubling when you think about it because we're just trying to frame it. What was Darrel Tyree Williams' alleged crime? He was sitting in a car minding his business. Just imagine that for you all at home. You're sitting there minding your business, not doing anything to anybody. And the police just come and open the door and they start accusing you of things and start, saying things that are aggressive. That just doesn't happen, Ken, in other communities. We saw it play out with Tyree Nichols in Memphis. I mean, these police terror units have to not have the license to treat black and brown people not just with violating their constitutional rights, but with the inhumanity. Y'all saw that Tyree Nichols video. You look at Darrel Tyree Williams' video, and he's saying, why y'all doing this? He says, I got a heart condition. And they keep treating him as anything but human. And that's what this is about. This is not just about injustice, this is about inhumanity of black people. And we have to speak truth to power every chance we get an opportunity. And so that's why we're here at Mount Peace Baptist Church saying, District Attorney Freeman, we expect you to make your decision and to do it in the best interest of not just Darrel Tyree Williams, but the unknown Darrel Tyree Williams that are going to happen here in Wake County. I understand that we should know something about the autopsy or something about the decision in 4 to 6 weeks.
That's right, 4 to 6 weeks. That's what she's told us. Apparently, there is an incredible backlog with the Wake County Medical Examiner's Office, which needs to be addressed on a completely different level, but it should not take 6 months to get a cause of death. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And we got video, y'all. I'm sorry. People, what street you said that was? Bragg Street?
Bragg Street.
I'm sure people in Bragg Street get arrested and charged with no video at all.
That's right.
Every day. So when the district attorney got video, got audio, I don't know why it takes so long. You can't have these two standards of justice because it breeds mistrust. When you see people in our community get charged all the time, seemingly with very little evidence, but then you see police officers brutalize us and we have evidence and nothing happens. We have to bridge this mistrust and say it's equal justice for us all. If we do something wrong in our community, nope, hold us accountable. That's only the correct and appropriate thing to do. If the police do things wrong, then hold them accountable. We're not asking for anything extraordinary. We just want simple justice. Right is right, wrong is wrong. With that, we'll take your questions. Yes, ma'am. Well, I'll let the people who were at the meeting talk. I got thoughts, but Ken and
So
Di.
what we heard from her today was that she cannot make a decision without having the completed medical examiner report, the autopsy. She can't do that without the completed autopsy or she's claiming, without the completed toxicology report. However, what we all know to be true again, as Ben has discussed over and over again, these two justice systems. If the justice system worked in Wake County for every citizen the way it works for Raleigh Police Department officers, we might have equity. We might have fairness. We might, but it doesn't. And what happens is that what we end up with is a deference to believe that law enforcement has not committed a crime, a deference to believe that law enforcement should not be held accountable. And because of that, we see a lack of urgency, but most importantly, a lack of political will, specifically on the part of District Attorney Freeman, to hold law enforcement officers accountable. That is made bare in the Rolling Stone article as well.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I think if you had the willingness to hold Raleigh police officers accountable, you wouldn't have had this expose in this national magazine, Rolling Stone, that had everybody all across America saying, what is going on in Raleigh? And so we have to continue, to, like we said, hold them accountable too.
And you would not also have to have organizations like Emancipate NC contact the Federal Department of Justice and request that someone from the outside come in and create accountability within the Raleigh Police Department. We are asking for a federal investigation of the Raleigh Police Department because the authorities here, i.e. District Attorney Lauren Freeman, is unwilling to or does not have the political will to truly investigate and find out about corruption inside of the Raleigh Police Department and hold those officers and the department responsible. Again, you cannot say that you are committed to community safety if you are not committed to ensuring that you are protecting the community from its local law enforcement.
And the hope, before we go to the next question, the hope is, our fervent hope, is that District Attorney Freeman will hold them accountable. When she look at that video, I hope she thinks about the humanity of Darrel Tyree Williams, saying I have a heart condition, and that these police officers then continue to tase him. That is criminal negligence. And I don't know how you can parse technicalities to say that we condone those actions. No, we have to condemn those actions. If it's not right for your child, it's not right that they do it to Sonya Williams' child. Any other questions?
If the DA would find that there should not be criminal charges against these officers, is there the possibility of pursuing a civil suit against RPD in this case?
Certainly. We're going to explore every possible legal remedy there is for Sonya Williams to get some measure of justice. But I want to dispel this notion that people of color, black people, only get partial justice. Either we get civil compensation or we get criminal culpability, but we can't get full justice. I have no doubt, if that was a white citizen who they did that to, that people would expect, no, they would demand full justice and accountability. They would demand that those officers be terminated, arrested, and charged. And they would say the city of Raleigh is going to honor the 7th Amendment and compensate this family for the wrongful death. White citizens would expect it all. And black and brown citizens should expect it all too, because the Constitution is for all of us.
And also I want to make a real distinction between that civil litigation and the criminal prosecution. Civil litigation is about individual families. Criminal prosecution is about a crime that is committed against the people of North Carolina.
Yes.
By killing Darrel Williams, Raleigh Police Department committed a crime against the people of Wake County, the people of North Carolina. The people cannot be made whole by a civil litigation. The people can only be made whole by changing systems, by creating accountability in systems that are wrought with racism, with bias, and with injustice. So, the civil suit is for Mrs. Williams and the loss that her family has suffered that they can never get back. But the criminal prosecution is about the people of North Carolina. It is about bringing justice to entire communities. So one is not enough to satisfy the harm that was caused. We need both. There has to be duality in order for us to get real justice.
Any other questions from? Well, I think she communicated in the meeting that she was only looking at the time of the taser, which we think leaves out a big part of what transpired. The pretextual stop, the proactive policing in and of itself, whatever violations of policy of deploying tasers unreasonably, and then certainly this notion that, you know, if this were young brothers from Bragg Street, they would have to talk. Or they, you know, it's, you hide behind this shield that says, well, we don't have to say anything. That's troubling. And I take that back. Everybody has a right to the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. However, you do have some responsibility to say whether you followed policy or not. And I guess nobody is trying to acknowledge whether they followed policy or not. That's critical here. You have policies to protect the community. We just want everybody to be able to get home safe. We want every police officer to be able to get home safe, but we want our family to be able to get home safe too. You know, confrontations or interactions with the police shouldn't mean that our children go to the morgue. I don't know if there are any other, I know we're gonna get questions from the activists. Any? Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, my understanding is that the DA under certain rules, ethical laws that he's supposed to follow, that's in the bar. I believe those rules may have been broken, and that they would apply to his license, and he should try to take the license away from him, or
Well-
challenge him.
Again, that is a long-term question, and I think it's way too early for us to be talking about anybody being professionally unethical. But it is not too soon to talk about being morally unethical. And we do believe that there is a lot of moral room for growth for the Raleigh Police Department and for the District Attorney's Office. We want to see real, honest prosecution or the attempts to prosecute, to hold, and again, to create what is real community safety, safety against a lawless Raleigh Police Department. And you asked earlier about whether or not, what Raleigh Police Department could do to be more transparent. They could tell the truth. They could be truthful about what happened. They could disclose, with the permission of the officers, whether or not these particular officers have had long disciplinary records. They could disclose whether or not they have seen patterns with the officers that are involved. There is lots of information that the Raleigh Police Department could offer to the community. But most importantly, they could offer an apology to the Williams family. Chief Patterson could call Mrs. Williams, one black mother to another, and apologize for the loss of her child.
We will continue to keep you all updated. It is about accountability, and the citizens have a say-so in this. You all, just think about if Darrel was your child and saying, I have a heart condition, and being tased multiple times. You have a last question?
This is not to make a judgment on Mr. Williams' health, but I just wanted to say that. But is there anything that can be disclosed about the nature of the heart condition that Mr. Williams had, that he suffered from?
I don't think, you can.
What we can tell you is that he complained at the scene that he had a heart condition. What we've learned through, and what we've also learned through discussions with the DA's office is that there is evidence that there were heart issues. So that'll come out once the final autopsy is done. What we learned is some information that we explained to the DA that we would keep the particulars of it between us out of a courtesy for her investigation, but we believe that the ultimate findings will support exactly what we're saying here today.
And thank you for the question, too. Every question matters. But make no mistake about this. We are trying to continue to keep the pressure on, because what we know, if we don't keep the pressure on, absolutely nothing will happen. You just have another black citizen dead, story over, no big deal here, nothing insignificant. It really doesn't matter. Well, it really does matter. It really does matter when a law enforcement officer is involved with the death of a citizen. It's a big deal. And I know you may say, well, why is it such a big deal? Because if it could happen to Darrel Tyree Williams, it could happen to your family too. So we will continue to keep you informed, and we will continue to keep the pressure on the district attorney and the Raleigh Police Department to be accountable to not only Darrel's family, but to its constituents and to American citizens who are watching this case all over the country, especially in light of the Rolling Stone expose. Thank you. Very quickly, yes, sir.
I'm from Bottom North Carolina. Been here in 55 years. And no one had mentioned, like I'm talking about family, no one had mentioned anything about the Civil War. In the Civil War, you had two parties. Nobody mentioned anything about there was the gentleman that spent all the money big time and took over New York. Washington. They said these officers here are behind Trump fighting. That Trump fighting people had a name for them officers. The whole different group that took over. Raleigh, North Carolina has been taken over by basically the Republican people. Used to be with Democrats. Now, compare yourself like you from the United States of America. It's different from coming from the South. It's civil rights. And if you're right enough to count now,
Yes, sir.
certain ways you got to carry yourself. After these gentlemen leave, they just stand up, truth and everything. When you leave, you make it hot. With individuals driving cars and walking.
And I do understand that, and I appreciate that. But we, as we have encouraged a couple months ago, we want witnesses who were there that night to feel free to come forward, that we will not be intimidated. We fear not, because we have the power of right on our side, and we're willing to fight to the end for our children's lives. Emancipate NC is here. Ken and I and the rest of the cavalry are a phone call away, if they feel that they can terrorize people in our community for seeking truth.
And also, sir, I hear what you're saying. And let me be clear. We recognize that our law enforcement agencies, many of them, are direct derivatives of slave patrols and slave catches, right? That their job, the derivative of their job is to police black and brown bodies, is to harm and control black and brown bodies. And we are hopeful that Emancipate NC is doing the work to elevate that very narrative and to shine a light on the most insidious type of racists that have infiltrated law enforcement agencies all across this country and are wreaking havoc on black and brown communities. We hear you, we see you, we are fighting with you, and I promise you, we will continue to show those hoods.
Yeah, and that's not lost on us. Even the FBI talked about that, the infiltration of white supremacist members into law enforcement. I want to believe in America we're making progress, and I'd rather strike a match than to curse the darkness. We will win this battle. The enemies of equality won't win this battle. Moral people of good conscience will ultimately win this battle. Justice for Darrel Tyree Williams.
Justice for Darrel Tyree Williams.
Ooh, somebody left their keys and